Hi there, this video is part 2 of how a bill becomes a law. So if you have not seen the first part, go back and check that out. So this is the last part of the process. This video deals with the executive check on the bill passing process. Now, when the founders created the Constitution, they designed checks and balances to be built into our system of government so that one branch of government would not be able to be too powerful. And so for the bill passing process, the legislation is created by the legislative branch, by Congress. But for a bill to become law, there then is a check on that. And that means that the bill is sent to the president for the determination as to is this finally going to become a law or not. And so the main thing that happens when Congress sends a bill to the president is that the president will put his or her signature onto that bill. And upon signing the bill, then the bill becomes a law within a period of time that's already stipulated in the legislation. For something more simple, it's going to be a 3-week turnaround period. But for something that's going to require lengthier setup of agencies, for example, or some significant changes, then more time will be given. But basically, the general outcome for a bill that passes all the way through Congress is for the president to sign it. However, there are other options that the president has. The president can put a signature with a signing statement on that bill, and that is something that refers to a procedure little used until the last 20 years. So a signing statement means that the president is signing the bill into law, but is putting in specific situations in which the executive branch is not going to be beholden to follow the law. So as you can imagine, signing statements are pretty controversial. And that's because everybody else has to follow the law, but not the executive branch. And so signing statements were not used for about 200 years of our history. President Washington used them, and President Adams used them. They kind of faded out after that. But then again, then in 2001, after the 9/11 attacks, President Bush, 43, the younger one, the son, utilized a signing statement on a bill dealing with how to manage what was considered at the time Sorry, got cut off there. Okay, so President Bush utilized a signing statement, and it was incredibly controversial because it hadn't been used in a long time. It dealt with the Patriot Act, which was designed to allow for what were called enhanced interrogation techniques. The late Senator John McCain vehemently opposed these techniques because he referred to them as torture, which he dealt with for 5 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. But a signing statement itself did have precedent, and President Bush pointed out, look, it's just not been used for a couple hundred years. And so since that time period, since President Bush brought back signing statements, all modern presidents have utilize signing statements as well on certain legislation. Now, if the president does not want to sign a bill, he does have the option to veto a bill. And there are a few different types of veto. Now, if the president wants to veto a bill outright, then he or she can simply say, I'm vetoing the bill, issue an official veto within 10 days of receiving the bill, excluding Sundays. And the bill will not have passed the executive check. There are types of vetoes that he can utilize. A pocket veto is one that is a couple hundred years old. The idea behind a pocket veto is that the president doesn't officially want to veto a bill, but he doesn't want to sign it either. And so if he does a pocket veto, then a pocket veto is a more casual way of letting the bill go through the legislation process and then through the executive without the president's signature or without the president's veto. A president might want to pocket veto a bill that they think is not going to be good for the country, but they don't want to not put the signature on it either. Or it might be one that later on the president will look back and say, hey, I never put my signature on it. Sorry that you don't like that bill. It's not my fault. And it was originally created because the first president to do a pocket veto simply put the bill in his jacket pocket took it back to the White House residence and didn't wear that coat again for the 10-day requirement. Now, he knew what he was doing, okay? This was not some kind of surprise. Oh man, I forgot to sign that bill. But that's where it got the nickname pocket veto. Now, there are two outcomes with a pocket veto. The first is if Congress is in session. Okay, so if Congress is in session 10 days after they send a bill to the president, and the president has not signed it nor publicly vetoed it, then it lapses into law. So it becomes law without the signature of the president if the president does nothing in that 10-day period. If Congress is not in session, so within 10 days after they've sent the president the bill, then then the bill will be effectively vetoed, and it will not lapse into law. And so the difference there is if Congress is in session or not. Now, Congress is aware of the potentiality of pocket vetoes, and so they very rarely send bills to the president when they will not be in session 10 days later. Sometimes Congress will do what's called a pro forma session, and one person will gavel in on that 10th day and say, hey, any business? And if there is a veto from the president, then they will be able to call the rest of Congress back to D.C. and override that if possible. So generally, Congress is aware of this 10-day period, and so pocket vetoes themselves, not terribly common. Overriding a veto is another balance on that check of the executive branch. If the president officially vetoes a bill, then Congress can override that veto with a 2/3 vote in both houses. And so 2/3 of the House must approve, and then 2/3 of the Senate must approve. It's very challenging to override a veto because you have to have supermajority agreement that goes across party lines in order to override that particular veto. It is possible. It is not terribly common.